Well, thank you everybody for joining us to this virtual interview and workshop put together by the AIA New Orleans, more specifically the Young Architects Forum. I am the 2020 Young Architects Forum Director, excuse me. And we've been trying to get some programming going, given the current situation and climate. We thought it'd be really good and ideal to kind of talk to young professionals, young students, and people that might be affected with the pandemic, and see, put some tips and tricks on your radar for how to interview and how to conduct yourself during an online interview, given that it's a new norm, essentially. God knows how long we'll be in this, depending on where you are in the world. And it may be likely that for a period, all the interviewing that you'll be doing would be virtual. So, a couple of introductions. My name is Javier Marcano. I'm an architect at EskewDumezRipple, and I am also the Young Architects Forum at the AIA New Orleans. We also have today Kim Wen, which is an architect as well at EskewDumezRipple, and she is part of the hiring team at EDR. So she'll be giving her comments and talking a little bit about her experience interviewing and giving some tips for those of you out there that would be interested in that. So an overview of what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about connectivity, visuals, sound, content, and then we'll move on onto the Q&A portion. So yeah, let's get right into it. So in terms of connectivity, it's incredibly important that before you go into any online interview, you should check your internet speed test, and there's a number of ways in which you can do that. If you just Google internet speed test, it should pop right up, or you can go to speedtest.net to find out your results. And usually you'll get a box that looks something like this. It'll tell you the test server from where you're pinging. It'll give you your download speed, your upload speeds, your latency, and sometimes it'll give you your retransmission. But these three numbers are the ones that are the most critical: download, upload, and latency. The things that are most critical for one-on-one video calling, you want to make sure that you have 600 kilobytes per second for high quality video, 1.2 megabytes per second for 720 HD video. And since you really don't know how many people are going to be in the call, or what the resolution of your camera would be, I think it's always best to plan for the worst case scenario, which would be sending 1080p HD video through multiple people across multiple locations. So in that case, you would need at least a 3 megabytes per second download and upload speed. So, and one thing that is critical is that given your internet provider, you might have differences on your speed because of many different reasons, because of how your router might be running, or if you're connected directly to an Ethernet cable. So some things, if you're not getting the internet speed that you were promised, you should, number one, check your internet speed, restart your modem, and then make sure that you're connected to your Ethernet cable. The other number that is incredibly important, it's latency. This is essentially almost like a pressure. If you download and upload are to give you an analogy, are the diameter of your bandwidth, essentially. Latency is how fast that that pressure is going through that pipe. So what is most optimal is to be, you want this number to be as slow as possible. So latency is measured in milliseconds, and it indicates the quality of your connection within your network. Anything at 100 milliseconds or less is considered acceptable for VoIP, which is voice over IP. So however, you know, in between the range of 20 to 40 milliseconds is optimal. So you can see here that I got 16 milliseconds, so I'm way below the range. So, you know, that would be a great connection. Also, it's really important to consider connecting your device directly to the Ethernet cable. As I mentioned, the internet speed that you get is the internet speed that gets into the service into your house. Once you connect that into the router, that speed kind of drops. So if you have a directed connection, you should get almost exactly or really close to what you're promised or what you're paying for. So let's move on into a bit of a more interesting topic. So visuals and the camera setup, the lighting, the room composition. So one of the things that is key for you to look very presentable in an online interview is to raise the camera. You can immediately do this. If you have a laptop, you can just prop a couple books in a table to raise the camera. Or if you have a webcam, you can kind of just position it so you're almost at eye level with the camera. And then that's just, it'll help you look your best. You don't want to have the camera point at strange angles of your face, you know, either up or down. Another thing that is incredibly important is lighting. You know, you want to look your best, and one of the ways in which you can achieve this is by positioning yourself in front of a light source. Especially, you would look your best if you're standing in front of a window. So avoid strong light sources on camera, windows, lamps, etc. So you don't want the camera to catch those glaring sources. And if you set up in front of a window, it'll, you know, for best lighting and CRI, which is color rendering index, and we can get into that in a moment. So you might remember from architecture school, or if you've been taking your test, that color rendering index is kind of like this scale of how true to nature colors look. And, you know, it gives you a measurement of how a lamp performs, and, you know, how vibrant the colors look. So, you know, if natural light is not possible or sufficient, you know, considering yourself positioning in front of a good light source with a good color rendering index. So you can kind of see a scale here of the different light sources, light types. And, you know, the one that has always been considered to have the best color rendering index is the incandescent and halogen bulbs. They take a lot of energy, but they're really great. You can kind of see here, with a regular incandescent bulb, you can get up to 90 or 95 CRI. Next up is sound, and I really hope that this presentation sounds great. I have multiple mics set up, and, you know, just for the sake of this presentation, I really hope that the one that I set up to pick up my mic is the one that I wanted. So we'll be talking about Microsoft setup, testing your mic, and alternate mic options. Just know that one of the important takeaways about this is differently than a regular interview where you're kind of coming into a space that is not yours. Having a virtual interview allows you the freedom of having complete autonomy of your space, and you can kind of curate and change your space to fit and suit your needs. That's, you know, even though for all the drawbacks that you might have of not having that personal connection, you can turn all those into positives where you can use technology to your advantage, and you can take kind of curate your sound, curate your visuals so that it is the best it could be. In regards to sound, it's very, very important that you test your current mic setup and understand where your mic is. So most computers let you test your input. So you can do this from the control panel on a Windows computer or the system preferences on a Mac. And this is just a screenshot of what you'd be looking at in a Windows computer. So you can kind of see the mic that I'm utilizing, and then it gives you different options for the sound that you'll be transferring. And there will be sometimes you'll have the option to change the sample frequency. And the golden rule is that the higher the sample frequency is, the better the sound quality would be. Although they say that it's only the trained ear can hear these differences, but you know, if you have the options, why wouldn't you go with the best? So check your mic setup and make sure that you have the correct mic sounding the way that you want it at the frequency that you want it. On the other side, if you're having, you know, if you test your internet connection and you're not near to where you would like to be, so you're kind of close to that 3 megabytes per second kind of range that we were talking about earlier, a higher frequency, sample frequency, would usually create larger files. So you'd be sending more information with a larger frequency. So it's kind of like a trade-off, so that know that sound and video could kind of affect the way that you sound and look in an interview. So if you've seen that you've been having issues with your connectivity and there's nothing else you could do, try lowering the resolution of your camera or try lowering the sample frequency of your mic. This shouldn't affect the way that you sound. It would just affect the kind of like the audio files that you're sending to the internet. Another tip that I usually do when I'm in calls at home is consider using a Bluetooth speaker with built-in mic if you have one. I wouldn't consider buying one just for virtual interviews, but absolutely, if you have one laying around, you know, you consider using it for your mic input and to hear it. So you don't have to have a kind of like a headset and kind of look like you're listening to music. It's all about kind of looking as normal as you could in a real setting, kind of replicating that real normal conversation. And the ability to have a Bluetooth setup is that it allows you to bring it much closer to you, and you can bring the camera much farther away. So it's all about the custom, you know, how can you customize the way that you look and the way that you sound. So if you want your picture to look, if you want to have a certain look to your room, which we'll get into a little bit later, you can kind of tweak everything. And then if you think that the right angle that you want, it's a little bit too far away for your mic to pick you up, then if you have a separate speaker, then you could bring it closer to you, and then you can kind of tweak and balance all these things. So now onto the content, which is probably something that a lot of people don't realize when you're, doing a virtual interview, is that, you're in full control of what happens from your side of the camera on. And you should be cognizant of this, and you should use it to your advantage and exploit the possibilities. So curate your virtual space, create a virtual presentation or PowerPoint version of your portfolio. We'll talk about a setup, a preferable setup, or something that I'll walk you through all the different pieces. And then lastly, we'll get into be yourself. So curating your virtual space, remember that you're in full control of what happens behind your screen. So given the many tools, laptops, portable speakers, mics, lights, and full autonomy and choice of your space, there's really no excuse to not only sound and look great in an interview, but to present a curated story of you. And that is something you couldn't necessarily do when you go to an office. You kind of don't know what kind of lighting they're going to have. You have no idea what the setup is going to be. You don't know if it's going to be warm or cold. You don't know if you're going to be comfortable or not. There's so many factors that you don't know that kind of build the tension of going into a place that you have to kind of just learn everything, learn how to get there, learn who to talk to. Whereas in an online interview, you're already at home or at your home office or a school library, wherever it feels most comfortable to you, and you have full control of what happens, which could be nice, or if it's not done correctly, then you kind of look like you're just in your living room with poor lighting, which is what you want to avoid, obviously. So to that I say, try to find a portion of your home or environment in which you think that you're gonna do your interview that is well lit and it's in some way interesting to the view, and if possible, customizable. So setting up in front of a library bookshelf, it's a great idea for you to kind of like tweak the way that your background looks. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 people in an interview, so not everyone would be speaking at the same time, and some people would be distracted, and some people would be kind of nosy and looking at your environment and what that looks like. So having that in mind, imagine curating a story of who you are, and even though you might not get into what is that behind you, it still tells a story of how you organize your space, how you live, maybe the things that you cherish, the books that you read, and maybe or maybe not you get into conversations of that. So because of that, I think it's because of architecture is such a tactile, visual, and learning intensive medium. If you have framed models, or if you have framed drawings of your thesis, or if you have specific books, architecture theory books that you like, consider, if you don't have a bookshelf, you maybe have a model that you want to showcase, maybe you want to put it in view for the interview. It might just give context to how you work and the things that are in your house and the things that are special to you. And maybe some of those drawings are even within the portfolio, so they can kind of realize, oh, that's the model for that thing, and it could bring the possibility of kind of people picking up on cues. This whole kind of virtual workshop came out because I was mentioning to the board at AIA New Orleans that most of the jobs that I've had, I've had online interviews. I think almost all of them. So my position right now at EDR, I was hired only through an online interview. I never saw the office before I accepted the job. And I remember very vividly kind of like curating everything about my space and, you know, kind of changing the books that I wanted, because as you know, many of these books are very recognizable, you know, like small, medium, large, and extra large by Rem Koolhaas, you know, things like that, you know, things that are very well known, would give a texture and a context to what you like and appreciate. Now, I'm certainly not saying that you should go ahead and buy important books so that you can set them up. It's kind of, this is just kind of to give you an opportunity to think about the things that you have, and the things that you've collected as a student, as a professional, and having the ability to showcase those, even though there might not be a part of the conversation. Another really important thing would be imagine creative ways in which you can showcase your skills and your abilities. There are so many different ways in which you could do this. And again, since you're in full control of your environment and your space, if you have a Wacom board, or if you have an iPad Pro with a pen, you know, consider walking through your portfolio and sort of sketching through it, so that people can understand that that's how you, if you feel comfortable with it, you know, sketch live, because a lot of people, a lot of architects communicate that way, you know, communicate sketching in front of each other and kind of telling a story, you know, that hand to mind connection. It's kind of a sign of how you think, and how you think critically, and how you think with your pen. It's sort of something that I've been doing more and more now, working in teams remotely. We kind of just share our screens and kind of sketch in front of each other, or like sketch digitally, excuse me. So I've been thinking myself of getting one of this kind of boards, so that I can much easily sketch while talking to other people at online calls, because it's becoming such an effective tool, and it takes so much time to sketch something with a mouse, well, when you just do it the real way, just digitized. The other thing that I haven't seen many people do, but I think it's incredibly valuable, is consider creating a virtual presentation or a PowerPoint presentation of your portfolio or of your materials. So be savvy about directing the attention and curate a presentation. And many times, portfolios, especially architecture portfolios, are meant or designed to be printed, and not all the time that same format and kind of content density it's suited for a computer. Certainly, and given that normally when you apply for a job, you would have to send your credentials and your portfolio. So the people that are interviewing you are very likely going to have these materials and going to be maybe even have been personally invested in your materials, and have zoomed in and have read a couple things. So this is an opportunity for you to pull back from that kind of very highly specific and highly detailed and full of content rich format, and turn it into a curated experience. So, you know, out of the 10 projects that you have in your portfolio, you know, you just want to highlight 3 or 4, and then you kind of want to piece together a rendering with a blow up of one detail, so you can kind of see, you know, so they kind of fit in the aspect ratio of a computer. So what I consider to be a great way of turning your portfolio into a presentation is to do it in a PowerPoint, kind of like the, you know, this view that I'm sharing with you right now. So it not only will show that you have prepared above and beyond what normally people do, but it affords you a lot of different functionality than just a PDF that you would have to be zooming in and out if you wanted to talk about something. Plus, it might give you, it might put you in a situation where somebody wants to drive the conversation and say, hey, go to this page on your PDF. So, you know, you curating the experience kind of says a lot about who you are and the things that you want to talk about, and kind of calls down all the noise, so to speak, because you won't have time to speak about everything in your portfolio. You would only have time to speak intelligently and eloquently about a few things. So this is a little bit meta, but I'm showing you right now a screen grab of what that affords you. So right now, this is the kind of view that your audience is going to see. And then this is the presenter functionality within PowerPoint. So if in your house you have a dual monitor setup, this is a great way for you to kind of manage the presentation, because it affords you the options to highlight, sketch, kind of do slide navigation, add notes. So like right now, I could go to any slide that I wanted to without you guys seeing me kind of scramble through. You know, if I wanted to go to the main page, I could do that right now. And I could go back to the same page, and you don't have to see me kind of pulling back and out of that navigation system. There's also many great tools within this that allow you to kind of highlight, laser into information, kind of highlight things, which I think it's a great idea to have all these tools to kind of make your presentation dynamic. So, and the other thing, this is kind of going to give you a rundown of all these different pieces, so you can kind of see what the setup could look like. So this is my setup right now at home, and I have, you know, a webcam mounted to a monitor. I am facing a window, and I have a dual screen to kind of show you guys the presentation. One screen is showing only the content that is being viewed by the audience, and the other one has the presenter options. So if I have any notes, anything like that, I can see it here. If I need to, you know, kind of blank mask the information and bring it back up, I could do that. There's so many different options that it's kind of like my de facto way of presenting, even within client presentations. It's what I like to do. Also, I have a speaker, a Bluetooth speaker with a mic, so that I can kind of hear the conversation much closer to me, and people can hear my voice much closer to the source. My computer is much farther than any of these things. It's obscure from view, and I don't like using earphones just because it kind of muffles the way that I hear myself. And so I kind of just like to speak without earphones. And then the other thing is I have a tablet so that I can see all the participants, because when you have a full screen of a presentation, you can't really see their expressions. So, and then again, this is just some of these things might be over the top and might not make sense for your setup, but it's just to kind of give you ideas that you're in full control of your environment, and you should take full potential of all the technology that most people have. You know, most people have phones that have great capabilities and great mics and great cameras. So, you know, if your laptop or your webcam doesn't function, then try using your phone as both of those, since, you know, they're almost specifically designed to have great voice input and camera input. If you have an iPad, like I was mentioning, consider using it either as a dual or third screen, like I'm showing right here, or use it as a way of kind of sketching live. And then, yeah, just consider, be very cognizant about how you're taking people through a journey of yourself and kind of like your content. It would say a lot about you if, you know, you're well presented, well lit, and sounding great. One last note before we kind of bring Kim to talk about a little bit about her experience hiring at EDR. I just wanted to emphasize, be yourself. One of the things that it's a common misstep in online interviews is the, you know, sounding too scripted. You know, as I mentioned, you kind of have the ability to have notes, to have an iPad, to have a notepad with notes. So I would say curate your experience and yeah, do have notes about your projects, but just try to replicate a normal conversation as much as possible. So yeah, given the fact that you could have a Word document or booklet notes, you know, try to be as human as possible and try to be off script. Maybe even if you have a small kind of descriptions of your projects, try to make them so that you can kind of be off script and you know, and ask questions and be inquisitive about the people and the culture of the office. You kind of want, in a way, to be the driver of the conversation and avoid having kind of like dead space and waiting for the person to ask you questions. Imagine you're just meeting a person normally. I think it would seem less jarring given the fact that you guys are not in the same room. And lastly, I think that it should be mentioned, dress appropriately to what it feels given your context, meaning, you know, don't wear a three-piece suit in your living room, for example. But maybe you were in a co-working space and that, you know, given the context, that might look okay. So just be cognizant that you want to curate everything about it. You don't want to seem like, you also don't want to seem like, you know, you don't really care. You just have a t-shirt and sweatpants. So maybe like a business casual, if you're at home, would be advisable, whatever feels good. Anyway, so does anybody have any questions before we get into kind of talking to Kim about her experience? Lauren, let me know if we have any questions.
No questions so far.
No questions so far. Alrighty. Well, while we wait for those, Kim, are you online?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience at EDR and kind of how you got into the position of being part of the hiring team?
Sure. I've been working for EDR for the past 3 years. I guess about a year ago, I mean, the office always has like a hiring committee of roughly like 8 to 10 people. They kind of rotate pairs of people. And I was invited about a year ago to join the hiring committee. And each pair of people kind of rotate and, you know, do the legwork of like sifting through emails and reaching out to contacts and doing career fairs and things like that. And then doing the first round of interviews.
Okay. So how many interviews have you been doing during COVID? Has it been more, less?
It was a lot during the shelter in place. It was,
oh, really?
In fact, like the moment, that week that we were, you know, mandated to stay at home, work from home, we were scheduling interviews around that time. So it was a weird time.
Were you guys hiring for many different positions all across the office, or was there something that was most needed?
We had, I guess prior to that, like for a couple of months, a few months, we had an open position for design architect, entry level. And then we're always looking for, I guess, 3 to 5 year experienced architects.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was kind of like iffy when we were quarantining, Christian and I, my hiring team partner. We were both questioning and talking to leadership, you know, like, are we really hiring at this time? Like, you know, it's so uncertain. Are we, you know, we looked at projection of projects in the coming year. The workload was demanding more staff. And so we went forward with it.
So
you were asking like how many interviews. I guess we interviewed 6 to 7 people, and then we hired 1 design architect, and then we did a bunch of interviews for the fellowship positions. We have the 12-month and the 6-month. I wasn't leading that part. Z Smith from our office, director of sustainability, led those, but I participated in the interviews.
So do we have a kind of a group of people that are sifting through the portfolios and resumes? Do you form part of that group?
Yeah, so since we made the hire, Christian and I did, we passed the baton on to another pair, and it just keeps rotating every couple of months. Yeah, like every few days, or I set like an alarm weekly to check the inbox of emails and resumes and
Do you think there's a consistent trait within all the people that you guys call for an interview that you would like to share?
I mean, I don't think it's like really, it's not like we have like a list of consistent traits that we're looking for, and if they check these off, then it's not that straightforward. We do look for, we have like just a list of criteria if like to help us in the interview and ask questions, and kind of like as prompts for conversation. You know, we look for indications of like, you know, hard skills. You know, you have any Revit experience, you have past work experience, or internships or fellowships or research. We of course look at your portfolio and your resume for just general design aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it in line with, you know, what EDR produces? But I think more importantly, we look into like your design process. So like the narrative of the projects that you present, that kind of storytelling, and you know, through conversation and talking about your projects. So in the interview, we roll through your portfolio. It's funny that you mentioned doing like a curated presentation. That seems even better than, you know, flipping through page by page of your portfolio.
Have you ever seen anybody do something like that?
No, we've only just so far just pulled up portfolios and then just flip through page by page, and we let the candidate just drive, you know, show us what they want to show.
Yeah. Do you guys generally would encourage to have construction documents in the portfolio?
That's a good question. I'm a little torn by that. I guess you got to ask yourself, like, what is this showing about me and my skills to the person interviewing? Don't just, you know, throw in drawings because they look cool, because you'll be asked questions. about it. You know, how does it tie into, I guess it goes into like sequencing and pacing your portfolio, and you know, having like maybe a range of scale of design work that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a good point, because it's often when you work in a project, you know, depending on the size, you really don't know who produced what. So if you put a drawing that doesn't really, it might be really cool, it might be really telling, but you're not really sure about how to explain it, then that would probably not be advisable. So I guess what you're saying is, like, if you're gonna showcase something you're proud of and that you worked on and that you can intelligently speak about.
Yeah, exactly. Like, does it tell a little bit more about, if you're presenting a whole project that you worked on, is it saying something about the design strategy, you know, of the project? That seems more fitting to put in construction document level stuff.
What about, do you guys have any tips and you know, tips for the audience of, you know, things that you've seen in the virtual interviews that you're like, yeah, you shouldn't do that, or yeah, do that, that was interesting? Like, did you have anyone show up in a three-piece suit in their living room, or things like that?
No, nothing strange like that. Before you brought up stuff about like expressing yourself and using the room as like another platform for expressing yourself besides your portfolio and resume, I never thought to really like judge a person's virtual environment, I guess. I guess the things that I pick up on, or I notice, is, I guess, not so much like, you know, that curating, but just the curating of your portfolio work. You know, identifying the strengths of each project, and then talking about those things. I think it goes into like, I guess, like mentally preparing yourself and finding clarity for yourself before the interview. So like understanding your goals, your future goals, what you're expecting out of your job in the next couple of years, what you're looking for in an office culture. And like you were saying, kind of like having all that stuff ready in the back of your mind so that you can kind of go off script. I find that people who have like great communication skills very captivating. It seems like they've got some clarity in their mind and what they're wanting, and then they ask great questions. I think that kind of mental preparation shows through.
Do you have any so preferences on like visuals or sound? I would imagine that sound is much more crucial than what you look like, from what you just told me.
Yeah, I guess visuals, you know, if you're in shadow or something, I'm not gonna really judge you for that. But I mean, it would be nice to be able to see your face. Feels more personal.
Yeah.
But
sorry, go ahead.
I guess if you're talking about visuals, it's mostly your portfolio, what you show, that represents you and your work, and you know, your creativity, your critical thinking skills, those things.
Do you think people tend to be scripted? Have you run into that, where they're kind of just like are full of notes and kind of sound robotic in a way?
Not so much. It might have happened like at the beginning of the conversation is because, you know, I mean, I get nervous in interviews and that's understandable. But then I think as the conversation moves along and they go a little bit more off script, it feels more natural and they feel more comfortable asking questions and, you know, being more engaged, and becomes a more productive conversation for both sides.
Do you have any, Lauren, do we have any questions from the participants? See if they want to know anything from the hiring process at EDR.
Yeah, sorry, no questions so far. Y'all, this is a great opportunity to talk to two people who have some good insight into this. So don't be shy. Feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah. I would add a little tip, unless somebody has a question.
Yeah, well, we're waiting for those questions. Do you have any tips for like your resume or your portfolio that, you know, you always seem, it's always nice to see?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a deal breaker if that, you know, you're not a super graphic designer. We see beyond the presentation and then look into the content, but it'd be nice to see, you know, just like a well graphically laid out resume and portfolio. You know, take advantage of white space. That helps you kind of pace the amount of information that you present on a single sheet of paper, and it forces you to, like, you know, call out, like if you did 25 iterations, you know, studying something on your project, maybe curate that down to like 5. You know, show the best ones, the most unique ones, stuff like that. Yeah, it's surprising, but I do come across every now and then like a page with like so many iterations, and you know, you just wonder like, what is this telling me?
Yeah. Do you find it useful when I've seen in a lot of portfolios or resumes that they have sort of like a scale of their abilities? And I've always, almost like a self rating. Do you find that helpful at all?
I think I know what you're talking about, kind of like, you know, 5-star for this software and then like 2 stars for this other. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I think just maybe having a list of things that you're competent in. It doesn't need to be rated.
Yeah, I've seen that as a trend lately on the many portfolios that I've seen, that people like to say, you know, like give themselves an Amazon review of their abilities.
It's not, it doesn't do me, from my own point of view, it doesn't help or hurt. If anything, I would think it kind of takes up space, valuable space on your resume, where you should be, you know, talking about your internships and your roles and responsibilities in those experiences. And then, you know, just having a list of software that you're familiar with, just to indicate that you're competent in those things, that's good enough for me. And it was for Christian, who I was teaming up with to interview.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions. If anybody has questions from the audience, let me know, Lauren.
Nothing yet. But if anyone does, like Erin said, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A box.
Okay. Do we have anything else to kind of plug in, Erin, housekeeping elements about the AIA?
Housekeeping. Oh, well, I guess, yeah, it's interesting because we're talking about kind of maybe next steps in careers right now, and applying to places and taking those next steps in professional development. So We'd encourage you all to tune in tomorrow to our storytelling series at noon. We'll be speaking with Zach Smith over at City Hall, who has had a very interesting trajectory in terms of his career and may have some insights. So registration can be done over at our website.
Awesome. Well, if we don't have any questions, thank you, Kim, for, wait, we do have a question?
Oh, no, we'll follow up privately.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kim, for your time, and thank you, Lauren and Aaron, for setting it up. I hope this was informative to some, and I guess we'll record it so people can access the information whenever they need to.
Yep, we can make the recording available through our YouTube and on our website.
Awesome.
Thank you, Javi. Thank you for sharing. And thank you, Kim.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a good day.